Have you ever just sat down and thought about time? It's a pretty weird thing if you take a second look at it. I mean, how the heck does it work? Is it just another fabrication us humans created to make sense of things? You'd be hard-pressed to describe an event without using some sort of declaration of time. Especially in the English language, we're taught to pinpoint things directly. Who, what, where, why, when, and how. It's interesting how language can change a person's perspective on the world. For instance, German has words that express concepts us English-speaking people just never even think about. For example, in German, they have words like
Waldeinsamkeit.
This is an expression pertaining to being lost in the woods, alone. One side of the expression pertains to loneliness, while the other pertains to being one with nature. No, I'm not high. I'm talking about Trunks! Yes, Trunks, a character from Dragon Ball Z who is my favorite. He may not exactly be the poster boy of the series, that clearly belongs to Goku and Vegeta, but he is one of the most interesting characters in the series. Or is he two of the most interesting characters in the series? Or is he one of the most interesting characters in the series and also an annoying spoiled little punk? I suppose that's up to your opinion, but what I'm talking about is a character with two lives. From two places, from two times. To clear this up, because time is as confusing as Morrissey's sexual preference of the day, when the evil androids show up around episode 9000 billion, the DBZ timeline splits in two. In one timeline, the androids destroy civilization as we know it, and in the other, they are stopped by the Z-Fighters. This happens right around the time Trunks is born. Because of this, in one timeline, Trunks grows up in an awful android death hell, and in the other, he grows up in relative peace. Well, until Bobbity shows up and resurrects Boo, and we'll get to that point. Same guy, two timelines, two lives. The only reason this matters is evil android Death Hell Trunks comes back in time to try and save us from the inevitable chaos in which he grew up. So Awful Life Trunks is from 16 years in the future, and Peaceful Life Trunks exists in the standard present timeline. Both versions we meet are unique. But wait, if these two people are the same person, wouldn't they be exactly the same? How can one guy be so clearly different? How does this all work? What is personality anyway? Are we shaped by the world around us, by the people who raise us, and by our mentors who teach us the path to critical thought and an open-minded worldview? Or are we born as we are, our personalities written into genetic code, replicated within our DNA, something akin to fate? Conditioning and perspective, what is taught and what is simply intrinsic within us? Well, let's take a look at this purple-haired pretty boy and his, other self to figure out what it all means. And hopefully through Trunks' trials and tribulations, we can discover what it means to be human, and exactly how much power outside influences have over molding us into who we are. Sentences are so complicated. Meet Trunks. Future Trunks, but like I said, his life's been pretty hard. A boy on a mission to save Goku from, get this, heart disease. I mean, I guess it makes sense. Have you seen him go Super Saiyan? That's gotta not be good for the blood pressure. Anyway, Trunks is the son of Vegeta and Bulma. A half Saiyan, like Gohan, but not like a whiny little turd like Gohan is. No, Trunks is pretty cool, and he wears a jacket that's too short for him, making him even cooler. And he has a giant-ass sword! This young man is a strong, disciplined, and most importantly, modest character. He's been through a lot and was raised in a time and place most of us could hardly fathom. Terror, destruction, and death from an all-powerful enemy plague his world. He knows what the feeling of true fear is and what it's like to lose everything. He may also have a little PTSD too, but we'll get to that. Trunks makes an entrance into the story like no other. Goku had just become a Super Saiyan and defeated Frieza, literally the greatest achievement of his entire life up to that point, as well as the coolest thing that had happened in the show so far. But before Goku could get home from Namek, a rebuilt Frieza and King Cold show up on Earth, but so does Trunks. He proceeds to go Super Saiyan and cut Frieza into little pieces in about 2 seconds, then blows King Cold's heart right out of his chest. Very badass. But at this point, our hero is a complete mystery to the Z-Team. He's just a super crazy strong dude who shows up out of nowhere to offer some help, and a warning. As we know, in future Trunks' timeline, the world is devastated. What you didn't know is all the Z fighters are dead in that timeline. This is of course thanks to the androids I mentioned earlier, who basically make Frieza look like a little baby because they're so strong. Just watching Trunks retell his story, you can see firsthand this badass booty kicker has seen some shit. The future is certainly not a nice place to live. By giving this warning, Trunks hopes to save his own future by saving Goku. He assumes that if Goku lives in this time, that he will still be alive in Trunks' time. But for now, let's look at other Trunks, or I don't know, little Trunks, normal Trunks, whatever. Present Trunks pops out of the baby oven in the standard timeline and is raised in a world that's more or less peaceful. By the time we meet him, he's a young kid who was raised by a hardcore dad who's tried to settle down with a super rich mom. This version of Trunks has had everything handed to him from the second he was born, and it kinda shows. He's spoiled and a little bit of a brat. To be fair, he is young, but he's incredibly immature and overconfident. Like his future self, he's incredibly strong, but with strength like this and no imminent threat, he's grown to become cocky and reckless. This little Trunks believes nothing, besides maybe his dad, could defeat him. What a contrast! Same person, different times, different worlds, different upbringings. Almost different personalities. But why would the same person be different if they're the same person? You may be wondering why I'm even asking this question. To a lot of people, nature versus nurture, the whole thing is pretty cut and dry. Obviously, how a person is brought up determines who they become, right? Or maybe you're thinking, obviously they're exactly the same person, we're just seeing different aspects of their personality expressed in different situations throughout the show. At the core, Trunks is still Trunks. Well, that's the issue, isn't it? Nobody really knows for sure. And honestly, it's hard to tell what's right and what's wrong, but hey, let's look at something we do know. So the reason we have two Trunks to begin with is because of time travel. Or so we think. What happened with future Trunks was interdimensional travel. He came from one point in one timeline to another point in another timeline. Two separate worlds! It's like some Superman DC shit up in here. Earth 1 and Earth 2. When future Trunks comes back again in the next season, it's because saving Goku didn't change his future. Let's say on Earth 1. But in the world we know, Earth 2, things had changed because Goku is still alive. Bear with me. This is how we got young Trunks and how he was able to grow up with a different life, because young Trunks' timeline was different. However, biologically, future and young Trunks are genetically identical. The absolute same person down to the last cell. Well, at least at birth. Those little things grow and die all the time. But let's look at these two characters. One character. Two? I don't even know anymore. I don't know. Future Trunks is a badass dude. Super strong, courageous, but also cautious. He grew up without his father and was instead primarily trained by Gohan, who is far more cautious than maybe any of the other Z fighters. Future Trunks honestly seems to be a lot more like the older Gohan we get to know later in the series, even though he's biologically Vegeta's son. Young Trunks is far more like Vegeta, who trained and raised him in the non-dystopian timeline. This shows in particular by his confidence and total lack of fear. On the flip side, Future Trunks has a deep fear inside of him, something we don't see from any of the other Z fighters. He's seen the absolute worst that could happen, the ultimate bad ending of the game of life, and he's desperate to find a way to solve that. But is that enough to really change who someone fundamentally is? Because there's no gauge to calculate someone's personality, at least no good one, and because time travel hasn't been invented yet, studies done on nature versus nurture have been done on identical twins. A common misconception about identical twins is that they are genetically identical. This is actually not true. Sure, they're close, but there can be hundreds of differences across their DNA. The reason for this is because your mother's and father's funky junk combines to give you a genome, or a set of genetic instructions for combining their chromosomes. Generally, a person holds 2 copies of every gene, but there are places within the genome that are exceptions to that rule. Here, even identical twins have been shown to have different numbers of gene copies, creating copy number variants. These can be benign or totally invisible differences, but they could also lead to different hair or eye color, or even susceptibility to things like cancer. But Future Trunks and his counterpart would be identical, just like I said earlier, right? The exact same person? Wrong! I actually lied. According to a paper released by the University of Michigan and the Watson Research Center in New York, The two would actually have different fingerprints at the very least. Depending on what Bulma did during her pregnancy and where each Trunks rested in the baby maker would create unique differences in the prints. Regardless, many of these tests were conducted on identical twins who were separated at birth. These are the closest things to exact human DNA replicants, so they'll have to do for now. Moving on, the twins in these studies lived totally different lives. What they found was often startling. Many sets of twins who had never even met each other had identical IQs, similar tastes in food, even smoked the same brand of cigarettes. Their happiness levels were similar, and even their dental health was almost exactly the same. The similarities continue down the list. Drove the same car, vacationed on the same beach in Florida, both suffer from tension headaches, and they even stand the same way, whereas fraternal twins do not. These findings point heavily towards how nature and genetics can really mold who we are. So maybe these two are the same after all. But what about things like the trauma future Trunks went through or the great upbringing young Trunks had with his dad? What about how much like Gohan future Trunks is, or how much like Vegeta young Trunks is? What's the deal with that? Mental trauma is a devastating experience to go through and can result in a number of issues. Watching everyone you love die, like Trunks did in particular, can cause some devastating effects or create long-term psychological health problems and emotional behaviors. That being said, did you know mental trauma can actually physically affect your brain? It all comes down to memory, how it's stored, where it's stored, and how it's accessed. A lot of people liken memory to a big filing cabinet that you pull a sheet of paper out of that reads, "peed my pants at my 9th birthday," but that's not actually how it works. Memory is actually a culmination of sensory stimuli that is retrieved from a network of areas in the brain. Everything from sight and smell to feel and emotional response make up a complete memory. What we're looking at specifically here is long-term memory, or the stuff you remember forever. The areas in your brain heavily associated with this are your hippocampus and prefrontal cortex. These decide whether or not something is worth remembering. Once something is worth remembering, they separate that memory into bits and pieces around the rest of your brain. Anyway, memory is formed by perception, which is how you look at things, including senses, and what it all means to you. Some people are really thick-skinned or have a different outlook on life, which can prevent trauma from happening to them, specifically because seeing a bunch of people blow up just doesn't bother them. Other people might melt into a drooling puddle, whereas others might develop PTSD that they eventually overcome. But one thing is for certain, mental trauma, if uncorrected or untreated, can give you brain damage. That hippocampus I was talking about is a pretty sensitive fellow, and if you stress him out, he's likely to break down and start making glucocorticoids. Which is a big word, but glucocorticoids are just adrenal hormones. These chemicals are triggered by a fight-or-flight response to stimuli. Ever gotten spooked? Had a jump scare? That instant panic is created by these hormones. It's a safety mechanism from your body to help keep you alive. But glucocorticoids are toxic when overproduced. They're only meant for emergencies. Ever been so scared that you were left shaking and not sure if you were going to cry or not? That's basically what is constantly happening to a brain that has experienced trauma. These adrenal hormones can actually cause physical neurological damage to your brain. Patients with severe PTSD have been discovered to have significantly smaller and hyperactive prefrontal cortexes, which deal with emotional responses like fear, and this may make things like intrusive thoughts more complex. But why all this brain stuff? Well, because we don't know what the heck a personality is. But let me ask you this question. If you didn't have any memories, would you still be you? Everything you like, or the people you love, everything you know, just gone. Would you still be the same person? Let me know in the comments below. I think that's a pretty good question. Really, what I'm saying is future Trunks' brain is different than young Trunks' brain. So they must be different people. They've lived through different lives. They were mentored by different people, and took on personalities because of it. If you remember our story you never knew on everything, we mentioned how everyone is connected and how everyone and everything you come into contact with makes you who you are. It's important to relate this idea to Trunks when thinking about the people he was around during his separate upbringings. Future Trunks with mild-mannered, intelligent, and meek Gohan. The other with stubborn, aggressive, angry, and hard-ass Vegeta. Not only were these two mentors, they were the strongest personalities for Trunks in both timelines. Personalities both versions of this character took on through osmosis, through propinquity. because of the amount of time the individuals spent with each other. Though at the same time, genetically, both Trunks are as close to identical as possible. Almost every strand of DNA in their bodies is exactly the same. Since we have no scientific study to look towards to help us understand timeline variance and its effect on genetic structure, we have to assume future and present Trunks are as close as possible to genetic copies. They both show intelligence, physical strength, the same physical traits all around. So the real question is, what makes you you? Is it what you like or what you like to wear? Or is it the other things like your DNA, your cells, your unique little brain? Or was it the way you were raised or who raised you, the things you were taught? When it comes to the endless debate of nature versus nurture, there actually is no answer. Like, scientifically, there is actually no winner to the argument. It's both. Genetics, physicality, thought processes, experiences, teachings, all of these things make you who you are. So Trunks really is two different people, albeit the same person, but different. You get it? The way you were raised and the life that you lived and how you lived it, all these things absolutely make you who you are. Just like future Trunks and Gohan and little Trunks and Vegeta. But there's other influences too. Cultural influences, influences from the media. I could go on and on, but what did you think? Have I convinced you that nature versus nurture is a bunch of crap? Let me know in the comments. I want to cover even more about Trunks and of course Dragon Ball Z in general, so hit that like button if you liked what you saw, and hopefully we'll do something like this again relatively soon. It's a weird way of saying that. I don't know if I liked how it said that. I'm Grant. It's my best Yoda right there. Bye everyone.